The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
The South Kesteven series is sponsored by Gainsborough Cycles 01427 617 752. For all your cycling needs, this is your one-stop shop located at 20 Ropery Road, Gainsborough, or online at gainsboroughcycles.com. There's a link in the description. Gainsborough Cycles, ask for Trevor Halstead. Welcome back to South Kesteven, folks, and the weather is starting to warm up a little bit more now. And you know what? It's warm enough to finally take my hat off. And my hair might look a little bit of a mess right now because of that, but who cares? I'm not one of those people that usually gives much of a damn about my appearance, to be honest. Now, we're beginning this episode at a church, which you can see over there. That's St Swithun's Church, and that belongs to a very big village here in South Kesteven. It's called Long Bennington. Long Bennington, Beyonders Farm, Long. Next up in South Kesteven we have one of the biggest villages in the west of the district. Lying close to the A1, Long Bennington used to be on that very road until it was bypassed some years ago. Now traffic flashes past it, but it's worth your while having a look at this place if you're ever nearby. Long Bennington's name is frighteningly accurate. It's a really long village. We're used to the idea of a linear settlement by now, but here that's taken to the extreme. From end to end, it's a good 45-minute walk. Long Bennington has a lot of history, some of it ancient, some of it much more modern. On the ancient side of things, this is supposedly the last place where King Harold of Wessex camped before the Battle of Hastings. It once had a priory too, which was an alien house of Mount Grace in Yorkshire. The village has long had connections with the Young Husband family, whose members include the head of a British invading force into Tibet in 1904. Lying beside the A1, the village main street was once part of the Great North Road between London and Edinburgh, and fans of the band Manfred Mann might well know this place thanks to it. In 1966, whilst travelling back from a gig in Hull, their car, a Ford Zodiac, skidded on some ice in the village, causing them to crash. Two of their members needed treatment at Grantham Hospital. It might still have been winter here, technically, but no icy patches were going to stop me from making this video. Having said that, ice will feature in this episode, thanks to the British Frozen Food Federation. Let's go. We start today's episode at the southern end of the village, and our first port of call is St Swithun's Church. Long Bennington has had religious buildings for quite some time, and some of them have been rather important, not just locally, but further afield too. The current church dates from about 1175. The chancel, though, is thought to have been used by a Cistercian priory from at least 1150 onwards. Close to the church is Priory House, which is one of the few clues to the existence of the former monastery. The church was granted to the Cistercian Abbey of Savigny in 1163 by Ralph de Fougeray, before being taken into the king's hands in 1339. In 1401, the priory was being farmed for the king by the prior Michael Rogers and one Michael Montaigne. In 1462 it was granted with other property of aliens for the support of the priory at Mount Grace in Yorkshire. A lot of the present building displays classic Norman features. It's been added to and refurbished over the years. A Millennium Grant bid was produced by members of the Church Commission and was successful. It was one of only 100 selected out of thousands of applications. Okay, strap in folks, this next section will take us north almost to the other end of Long Bennington, and it's not exactly a short amble. Long Bennington is exactly what it sounds like, a really lengthy, elongated village that runs along the former route of the Great North Road. In classic Great North Road village fashion, most of Long Bennington's major features are on the old main road through the place, but over time rapid expansion has occurred in several areas on both sides. Here though, we're still in the older part of the village. The area around and to the immediate north of the church almost resembles that of a typical Nottinghamshire village with its many red brick properties. We shouldn't be surprised by that. Whilst Long Bennington is wholly within Lincolnshire, it lies on the Nottinghamshire border. By walking north through these streets, we're actually following the course of a river. Not that you can see it at this point. To the east of the village is the good old River Whittam, which forms the parish boundary with Westborough and Drydoddington. In a way, it's a good thing you can't see the Whittam from where we are. A lot of Long Bennington residents will tell you that water is not their best friend. Quite a few times over the past couple of decades, the village has experienced trouble with flooding. There were significant surface water occurrences in 2012, 2013, 2015 and 2019. The worst was in 2015, an event that saw flash flooding completely swamp the Royal Oak pub, which we'll see later around this route. The existing drainage system has been identified as not fit for purpose, but earlier this year, on the 6th of January 2025 to be precise, Lincolnshire County Council began work on improving it. They aim to ease pressure on the sewer system here by laying new pipework and gullies on the western verge of Main Road between Chapel Street and Willow Court. Well, I guess this is a very seldom seen part of Long Bennington, to be honest with you, because we're nowhere near the main street at this point. All the major landmarks are on that road. Tell you what though, you know what I think about this? Great place to exercise your dog, isn't it? You can bring your dog over here and they can run around to the heart's content over this land, I would imagine. Fabulous. Midway now along this lengthy walk to the top of the village, we've hit King's Farm Day Nursery on Winters Lane. It's not your average school building this, is it? Nope. This building is a former farmhouse that's been professionally converted with an emphasis on safety. I reckon it looks good myself. Let's continue around this and make for another residential area. Now the older properties have started to disappear and much newer, more modern housing has come into play. This part of the village, the northeast of it, is a network of new builds and bungalows on and around Westborough Lane. It's a classic example of how villages expand in stages from a historic core. These residential areas only account for part of what is a massive population here. Long Bennington is larger in terms of populace than some small towns in the UK. Let's find our way out of these to the main road, because next up we have a business park to discuss. Well, so far up to this point I've been going just under 40 minutes. It probably will take you, if you go completely coast to coast, 45 minutes to walk from one end of Long Bennington to the other. It's not Long Bennington for nothing, trust me, it's a big place this. But now we're on the main road, and this used to be the Great North Road and then the route of the A1 until the A1 bypassed it. We'll talk a bit about that later. Now, most of the landmarks are on this road, as I said earlier, and here we have one of them. That is a sports field where Long Bennington Football Club play. Just beyond that though, there's an industrial estate, and this is a very important industrial estate if you're into or involved with frozen food, and here's why. Occupying a tract of land between the A1 and the main village street are a set of buildings which belong to the Long Bennington Business Park. Among them is the British Frozen Food Federation, or BFFF for short. It was formed in 1973 from a previous company called Nordoff, whose roots go back to 1948. Essentially, what the BFFF does is promote and protect the interests of the frozen food industry by supporting its manufacturing sector. It has over 300 members comprising producers, wholesalers, importers, exporters, brokers, retailers, and related associate businesses. It's a big deal, and Long Bennington has been its base for years. Even though the current business has only been around since the 1970s, the BFFF couldn't exist today without the discovery of flash freezing. As such, its website tells you the story of how flash freezing came to be a standard food production process across the world. In 1924, a man named Clarence Birdseye revolutionised food production, packaging and distribution for the world for the next century and beyond. Whilst out fishing in Newfoundland, Canada, he observed that when fish were caught, brought out of the freezing waters and then placed onto ice, the combination of the temperature and exposure to the elements froze the fish almost instantly. When it came to eating the fish once thawed, it was just as firm and fresh as if it had just been caught. Just to the south of the business park is Long Bennington's sports and recreational area, anchored by the Long Bennington Pavilion. These are known to most as the Queen Elizabeth II playing fields. There are two main sports that take place on these grounds. One is bowls, the other is football, and it's the latter of those two that's getting the spotlight here. Long Bennington FC are an FA Charter Standard community football club. They provide football for all in the village and the surrounding areas. They have teams across all age groups for both boys and girls, and they reckon they can keep people playing until the age of 75. That's not a false claim, and here's why. In 2015, the club introduced a type of football that's not played everywhere: walking football. It's exactly what it sounds like. Invented in 2015 by John Crute, it first came to public attention in 2014 when Barclays Bank aired a television advert featuring walking football to promote its services. Walking football's popularity grew more in 2017 thanks to an April Fool's joke on Sky Sports News, but since then it's led to several clubs taking up this version of the game. In fact, it's since become a bit of a craze. There are now thousands of teams all over the UK with sides featuring players that are well over the age of 75. It's aimed at keeping people aged over 50 involved with the game, even if they have reduced mobility. The sport can be played both indoors and outdoors. The game has a few differences from the traditional. It was originally played without goalkeepers, although it can be played with them too. Crucially, the ball must never be kicked above head height. Different footballs are used in the indoor and outdoor variations of the sport. Long Bennington have teams for the over 50s and the over 60s, and they've won several tournaments, including being the first ever Lincolnshire FA County Champions in 2016. So now we're heading south along the old route of the Great North Road, where most of Long Bennington's main features are. First of all, we've got a former pub to discuss. This is Whittakers Bar and Restaurant, which used to be a pub called the Wheatsheaf Inn. It was a traditional public house, but it was taken over in July 2013 and completely refurbished, modernised and transformed into the family-run contemporary bar and restaurant you'll find here now. It's open from Wednesday through to Sunday, offering a wide range of beverages, light bites and locally sourced seasonal dishes. There's something for all tastes here. And right next to Whittakers, you've got a little shop which sells gifts for the garden and the home. It's called the Oriel Window 90A. That looks pretty cute, doesn't it? I wonder what that was in a previous life. It clearly wasn't a gift shop to begin with. That must have been something else, surely. And from there, we're going to walk over the road towards another business. I'll just keep the camera rolling while I do this, actually. This is called the Blossom Tree, on the corner of the next road, and I believe, I'm not totally sure, I think this is a hair salon. We'll get a bit closer and I'll find out. I'm pretty sure it's a hair salon though. Let's have a look. Yeah, it is. It's a hair salon. I can see there's a barber's thing outside. Cool, excellent. Now we're going to head up the road that's next to that here. This will take us towards the doctor's surgery. We'll be back to the main road again shortly, but next we have to divert away for a brief moment to catch the medical centre on Valley Lane. This is open weekdays only from 8:30 AM until 6 PM. Valley Lane, by the way, provides traffic with access not only to the A1, but also to several villages to the south of Newark, like Staunton, Cotham and Shelton. To get back to the old Great North Road again, we'll go the long way round via Costa Row and Manor Drive so I can get in a few more residential areas. Mind you, I do have my reasons. While we wander through these streets, let me tell you a bit about King Harold of Wessex and what he's got to do with this village. Most people know at least who he was. Alternatively known as Harold Godwinson, he was the last crowned Anglo-Saxon English king, reigning from the 6th of January 1066 until his death at the Battle of Hastings on the 14th of October that same year. It was the decisive battle of the Norman conquest, and Harold's death marked the end of Anglo-Saxon rule over England. Most people also know that according to legend, Harold died by being shot in the eye by an arrow, although that's long been a topic debated by historians. Others reckon he was killed by being lanced and his body was dismembered by 4 knights. Others agree there was an arrow involved, but it was in his head, not his eye. Believe what you will, but one thing that most people agree on is where Harold camped on his way to Hastings to fight in the battle. Long Bennington is believed to have been the last place he did so before reaching the south coast. Okay, we're back on the old Great North Road again. Now, this next section involves not just one, but 2 pubs. You can see behind me there's the Royal Oak, which we'll talk about in a moment. But also, next door to that, this green building, that's called the Old White Swan. And I reckon that used to be the White Swan pub. What do you think? Now we're on the main road again, and our next stop is the Royal Oak, the pub that suffered those terrible floods a decade ago. Note first of all how this building is set back from the road. It was once part of a more isolated building. It hasn't always been just a pub. In the 1920s, when the cars were becoming more and more a widespread feature on our roads, the Royal Oak capitalised on that by offering garage services. It was, after all, ideally placed for it. It's on the route of the old Great North Road. However, now it's purely just a pub because by 1965 all its garage services were no longer available, thanks to the construction of a bypass around Long Bennington. That bypass is still here. Today we call it the A1. This next thing takes us all the way back to the beginning of this walk. St Swithun's Church was for a time only one of the two this village used to have. There was a second church dedicated to St James, and it stood here. To tell the story of it, we have to go back to 1890. In that year, Maria Susanna Grote, who lived at Long Bennington Manor, commissioned Isaac Dixon & Co. of Liverpool to create a building on this piece of land at a cost of £650. It was built in an ecclesiastical style with a belfry and a bell, and was intended for holding church services and social gatherings. It became known as St James's Church. It had a nickname too, the Iron Church, because of its corrugated iron exterior construction. Attached to it was a reading room, also built with a corrugated iron exterior. That was used for meetings of an educational and recreational nature. In all senses it was a church, but it was also sort of a village hall too. In 1921, the executors of Grote's will conveyed the land and the two buildings to three trustees: Arthur Dillaval Younghusband, Robert Mills and Gertrude Mary Bingham. It was stated from that time onward it should be known as St James's Hall, but it could still be used as both a village hall or a church, or indeed both. Between 1966 and 1970, a Village Hall Improvement Committee was established to raise funds for improving the facilities and furniture in both buildings. This was done, and there exists online a photo from 1978 showing the hall in its final form following those upgrades. However, the hall that stands here now isn't the same. It suffered a terrible fire in 1987, and so the whole thing had to be completely rebuilt. The current structure is mostly from 1989, but it still serves the same purpose as it always has. The corrugated iron, belfry and bell, though, are all consigned to history. And outside the hall we've got a parish notice board, so you know what that means by now. One of those being left right there, that's Long Bennington in the books. Thanks to the hall, it's given us an ideal opportunity to mention a bit of family history. As mentioned in that last section, one of the hall's original trustees was a member of the Younghusband family. For years, that family have had ties to this village. Francis Younghusband was a colonel in the British Army and led an invasion of Tibet in 1904. He negotiated a treaty after most Tibetan officials fled with the Dalai Lama into the countryside. We've earned a little rest now, and I think, luckily, Long Bennington has the ideal place for one. This here is a small coffee shop called Baker's at 62. It used to be a hair salon. Now, instead of styling hair, this serves coffee and tea, a cracking breakfast, and a selection of homemade cakes. I've linked their modest little website below. I'm all for promoting local business. Over the road is the Co-op, which hasn't been here all that long. This stands on the site of a former garage called Bennington Gear Change. This Co-op was built in 2015 and it cost £1.2 million to do so. To celebrate its opening, the store's first 50 customers received a free bunch of flowers. The store, which has an ATM, is open from 7 AM to 10 PM 7 days a week and stocks a range of groceries, chilled and frozen food, as well as Lincolnshire meat. Locally made products on sale here include Springhead beer from Laneham and goods from Gadsby's Bakery of Southall. Now, pretty much all the way down the main street here, as I've been getting closer and closer towards it, I've been getting this great big waft of fish and chips. There's a reason for that, because this shop over here is Sharrick's. It's a Chippy. Now, this has got a story to tell, and it also involves the Indian next door. Here we have Sharrick's Chippy, which gets its name thanks to the amalgamation of its owners' names, Sharon and Richard Potts. Note too, though, that the Chippy isn't alone here. Next door is an Indian takeaway, and the two are actually connected, literally and figuratively. The Potts family have owned the premises since 1968. For many years this was a general store run by two other Potts family members, Bob and Grace. Richard Potts is their son. The unit, now occupied by the Indian, used to be the village post office, and it was so for decades. When the post office eventually moved away, the unit lay dormant for a while until Richard heard about a new business opportunity thanks to a village resident who enjoyed a curry, and so he spotted a gap in the market. That resident helped to arrange a meeting between Richard and Sakal Mia, the owner of the Ashiana Indian restaurant at North Muscombe, which we covered a long time ago. Mia said demand from villagers for a more convenient Indian takeaway service had persuaded him to open the new venture. Richard Potts used to live above the shop and worked in it for his dad. In his words, it was a real Arkwright-style shop, similar to the one in Open All Hours. Apparently, people used to have bets in the Royal Oak about asking for something that you wouldn't be able to find in this shop. You could get anything from a bag of frozen peas to a push-bike tyre in this place at one time. I wonder if the regulars at the Reindeer pub put bets on the shop's stock too. This is a gastropub that serves traditional and modern food and a selection of beers, wines and spirits. Seeing as it's based around food mainly, some say it functions more like a restaurant than a pub. This is the last pub on the walk, but Long Bennington used to have another one. It was called the White Swan, but of course we already know where that was. Okay, we're almost all the way around Long Bennington. This has taken me about 2 hours up to this point. Just shows how big this place is. And I've still got a fair bit of walking left yet, because to get back to the car I've got to walk all the way back down the street that takes you to the church. It's a dead end. There are two main landmarks left though, and they're both still on this main road. One of them is the primary school, the other one is an old Methodist chapel. This building on your screens now is Long Bennington School. The village has had a school since 1847, when the first set of buildings were constructed here in the grounds of the modern school. It was a national school which later became a public elementary. Built by subscription, it could accommodate 120 children. In 1893 the school was enlarged to accommodate 160, but by 1913 the average attendance was only 112. The former school buildings no longer stand. Along with the schoolmaster's house, which dated from 1849, they were demolished to make way for the modern school in the 1980s, and Long Bennington C of E has been here ever since. And not far away from the school we have this gorgeous old Wesleyan Methodist chapel, which is still in use today as the base for the village's modern Methodism. Dated 1864, this lovely old building is made of red brick with a gabled roof. Interestingly, although originally Wesleyan, the chapel is identified as Primitive Methodist on a 1905 OS map. The Primitives also had, though, their own building. That was located just to the south of this and predated it too. It was built in the early 19th century and closed in 1932 when the two Methodist church branches were united. The building is now in use as a house. Long Bennington has had several other Methodist chapels, including a Zion Primitive building which closed in the 1950s. And between the two you can see this little hut. I don't know whether you sort of guess what it'll be from this distance, but that is a police station, or maybe an old police station. I don't know whether it's in use anymore. I certainly can't see any squad cars or riot vans around, so I don't know whether the police are still here in Long Bennington. You would hope they are, but Yeah, it doesn't look very open, to be honest with you, that police station. Right, we're going to cross the road, and there is actually one final landmark to see. It's the War Memorial, which is in a little garden on the junction with the road that goes down towards the church. We'll just check this out as well. Here we are. There it is. There's the War Memorial in there with some nice poppy wreaths at the base of it. Lovely. And then to finish the route, we're going down here, back to where we began. This road turns right and runs towards St Swithun's Church, and that will be the circuit, the big circuit of Long Bennington. Now I'm going to film basically from here all the way down to the church, and while we enjoy the views and what's left on this walk, I'm going to tell you a little story that's to do with a very popular band in the 1960s. Manfred Mann have a connection to Long Bennington. Between here and the end, it becomes residential once again as we head for the church where all this started a while back now. There's just time as we walk these final few streets to chuck in one final story. In 1966, the band, Manfred Mann, played a gig in Hull at the university on Thursday the 13th of January. Returning south the morning afterwards and travelling in a Ford Zodiac, the icy conditions that day caught them out. Driven by Anthony Hales, the car skidded on the slippery surface when they reached Long Bennington, causing them to crash. Singer Paul Jones suffered a broken arm, whilst Manfred Mann, the drummer the band was named after, had a chest injury. Both were treated at Grantham Hospital. For all you younger viewers who haven't got a clue who I'm talking about, here's a musical education for you. Manfred Mann were one of the bands that helped define the swinging London scene in the 1960s. Their big hits included Do Wah Diddy Diddy, Pretty Flamingo, Mighty Quinn, and 54321. They split up in 1969, but another band called the Manfreds still perform today, featuring the original members Paul Jones and Tom McGuinness. And that's Priory House, by the way, which we've mentioned a couple of times on this walk around Long Bennington. That was a good one, wasn't it? How many villages can say they've got links to a Saxon king, a Tibetan invasion, and a 1960s rock band? It can't be many, but that's Long Bennington. It's absolutely loaded with stories from one end of its long, serpentine-like main street to the other. Now, next week here on TVI, we're having a bit of a break. There's going to be no videos at all now until April the 7th. I'll see you guys in the Derbyshire Dales on that date. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.